dying and you were with him, and he was terribly afraid of being alone, to the point where he begged you to allow him to have visitation rights on his spirit after he died. What was it? And I think that this sort of helped, was one of the reasons why you wrote about mental health. Why was your father so terrified of being left alone?
It begins with my grandmother, his mother, because my grandparents lived in the estates, rubber estates of Malaysia, Malaya, British Malaya, and my father was born and brought up in the estates. There is a story. When I was growing up, I was always there was a particular story about my grandmother, and she left everything and ran to the well, and she was going to jump in. She didn't, and nobody understood why. And I remember not being allowed to ask more. And as I grew up, I realized that she was OCD, and simple things like she washed her hands all the time. We would only have lunch at 3 o'clock because she had to wash every single leaf. The moringa leaf? Every single leaf had to be washed. So we just never ate. We were hungry. So, but nobody wanted to talk about it. If I just asked, what happened to the well? It was the well. And it was this thing. And one day when she died, and then when I went to stay with somebody, and they said, your grandmother's a mental case. And so I innocently went to my father and said, they said your Amma is a mental case. My father was so upset by it, and I didn't quite understand. Then as I grew up and older, I understood that my grandmother had OCD. Poor thing, there was no diagnosis, nothing was explained, and we didn't know how to help her. None of us knew how to help her, and she died. But the effect on my father was that he was always afraid of being left alone, because I think he was a boy when this happened, so he thought his mother was going to die and he'd be alone. That gave me an understanding of what to do when he was dying. So I tried to make sure that he was never ever alone. Even in the moment of death, whatever it was, we were all there surrounded by him. So that's how the story came about. Does that answer the question? Yes.
So you practiced as a lawyer, trained and practiced as a lawyer, and you were saying that when you were studying law, one of the things that struck you was the law's response to suicide.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
This is when I studied law, this was in 1990s, and one of the things in Malaysia, it's changed now, but I'll explain chronologically. Under the penal code, if you attempt suicide, it's a crime. So it just didn't make sense to me. You're already so screwed up in the head, you're going to commit suicide, and then if you fail at it, no one helps you, they take you, they arrest you. That just didn't make sense. So through my work, as in through my writing, I try very hard to do this and to dispel this idea. And I'm very happy to know that, that in Malaysia they have repealed it's no longer a crime. 309 Penal Code is repealed. So now you will get help. At least that's something.
So did you see that attitudes towards mental illness are changing in Malaysia?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. This book has been accepted. I was a little afraid whether people would accept the stories. And what somebody said to me was that your stories make us feel uncomfortable. And I'm not quite sure whether it was a criticism, I don't take it as such, but I was very happy because it means that what I write has had an effect on you, that you are uncomfortable enough to be able to tell me, because most people think that I write as from my experience and my stories. Yes, I write, those are things that happen to me. But I also always ask the question, why? Why would somebody behave like that? One of the stories, my final tapasya, it was a very difficult time in my life. My mother was in the ICU, and I was really lonely and really frightened. Not even alone, I was frightened because I thought my mom was going to die. And so when I reached out to the people I thought who would help me, they were quite unkind. You have a guru who says to you, your energies are so negative, you will kill your mother. And kill? going to kill my mother. And then the man that I love said, I'm not a priority in his life. And the friend would write messages with toxic in my mouth. So, yes, I dealt with it by writing, but I was more curious about why did somebody say that to me? So those are the focus of all my stories. And I think in writing that's how I've been able to reflect the reader in what I write. So that's why I think that they have come back to me to say that they're uncomfortable. Metopia, which is also one of the stories is called Metopia, and the elongated version is the novel. But it's a story about a woman who loses her child because her husband converts to Islam, and without the consent of the husband, converts their child as well. So the laws of the land, I come from Malaysia, allow it. It's not law, it's laws. Both Sharia and the civil law allow this. I just can't imagine that. I'm not a mother. The closest I have to a child was a dog. And I go berserk if anybody did anything to my dog. So what would you do if your child is taken away from you? So those stories are, and how do you all live with yourself that you have gone to a house, taken a child away from its mother, and how does the mother deal with it? When I was a child, my mother would tell me stories to go to sleep, Mahabharata and Bible, whatever stories. And one of the orders by the court is that the mother shall not influence the child. How does a mother not influence the child? So these are all the questions that bothered me, and I thought, okay, I will start investigating, and that's how these stories came about. And many, it's Uncharted Waters is another favorite of mine, which is about a clandestine adoption that went horribly wrong, that almost went horribly wrong.